Title: The Thread of All Things. Year: 93,750,000. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The architect of breath did not build with stone or steel. She exhaled structures into being, each shaped by a memory, a hope, a kindness she'd once been shown. Her cities inhaled their people gently. But she was tired. Her newest creation, Vira, stood beautiful and empty. The people refused to enter. "It's too open," they said. "Too vulnerable. Too human." So she walked the edge of the settlement until she met the one who binds threads, a traveler with no home. Only stories sewn into their cloak. "Why won't they come?" she asked. "Because you built a place where no one hides," they said. She nodded, and began again. Not the buildings, the listening. Chapter 2. Together they walked the outskirts, met a merchant who feared silence, a widow who feared laughter, a soldier who feared dreams. They didn't advise, they invited. "Lie so fully," the architect said, "that your life becomes a riddle only love can solve." The thread binder handed each person a needle, not to mend, to stitch presents into the day. Soon laughter echoed in unfinished halls, arguments rang through gardens, and tears polished marble. The city filled not with perfection, but participation. And there breathed, "Because humanity isn't a blueprint, it's a chorus." Chapter 3. On the first festival of threads, no banners flew. Only clothing turned inside out seems visible. Flaws shone. The architect stood in the plaza, the binder beside her. "Will it last?" she asked. "No," they said, "but it will return." And so the people danced, not in sync, but together. A stranger shared a poem. A child taught an elder how to fall. And the city smiled, not because it was whole, but because it was shared. Ira became legend, not for its brilliance, for its breadth, because in recognizing each other, we remember ourselves. And the thread holds. Title: The War That Bowed Its Head. Year: 92,646.15. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The lone veteran returned to the Valley of Talbrith. After 30 years, his medals long buried, his name now spoken only in warnings. He ended a war, but not with peace, with devastation. He came not to reclaim, to apologize. There, amid the wind, bent grass, and broken pylons, he met the spirit midwife, a figure who ushered dying things into transformation. She cradled no babies, only truths. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know," he replied. She offered him a chair, not judgment, and he sat. "What shines too fiercely casts the longest shadow," she said, and he looked behind him and wept. Chapter 2. Rumor spread. The war hero had returned. Some came to curse, others to gawk. He said nothing. Each day he carried one broken helmet from the battlefield to the communal fire. No speeches, only presence. The midwife guided those willing to speak to him, mothers, sons. Wounded, he listened, he didn't defend. One night a young soldier challenged him. "You think being sorry is enough?" "No," said the veteran, "it's the start." And he offered his knife, handle first. The soldier took it, and buried it in earth, not in flesh. Chapter 3. The fire pit grew, not in size, in gathering. Stories once held in silence poured out, and the lone veteran, once untouchable, became reachable. The midwife placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is your legacy now," she said. He nodded. The valley healed not in monuments, and meals shared, and fields sown. The war did not disappear, but it bowed, and became soil, because humility did what fury could not. It listened, it bent, and in bending, lifted others, and what once blazed as glory became light. Title: The Constellation Pact. Year: 93,557,692.31. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The wind-worn stranger arrived just before the flood. His cloak tattered, eyes filled with maps he never drew. He claimed nothing, promised less, but his presence slowed arguments and sparked questions. In the city of Belholo, law at war with its own future. The council argued over sandbags while the water lit their feet. "The flood will pass," said one. "It always does," said another. "But it takes more each time," murmured a third. And then the stranger spoke. "Choose boldly, even the stars will shift to follow." At that, an old soldier stirred, and so did the spirit of war, watching silently from the tower above, awaiting something rarer than peace. Unity. Chapter 2. When the levees cracked, It wasn't orders that saved the city. It was hands, holding, sacking, gripping ropes, pulling strangers from rooftops. The wind-worn stranger offered no commands, only encouragement. The spirit of war descended not to fight, but to lift. "No one wins alone," she said, and none dared argue. A baker offered a shop, a librarian her roof, a thief her knowledge of tunnels, and mellow stone by soaked stone stood, not proud, present, together. When the storm passed, the streets were full, not of debris, but of songs, and the stars did seem just a little closer. Chapter 3. They carved the story into a wall, not with names, with hands, everyone's, pressed in clay. The wind-worn stranger vanished with the morning tide. The spirit of war remained. She taught conflict, yes, but also what it protected. And when asked what changed Bellow's fate, no one said hero. They said baker. They said roof. They said hand. And every year after, they honored the flood, not as tragedy, as turning, because working together didn't erase hardship. It transformed it into constellation, into memory, into proof that the stars will shift when we choose each other. Title: The Mask That Sang. Year: 93,461,538.46. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The song woven from wounds infiltrated cities not with blades or bugs, but with lullabies. Her voice held the secrets of both traitors and martyrs, and no one knew which side she truly served. In the state of Kedres, where peace hung by a whisper and war by a rumor, she met the echo of creation. He was a master of frequencies, tuning devices and people alike, listening for the notes between words. They crossed paths at a masked gala, where every smile was painted and every ally wore daggers. "We're not who you say you are," the echoes said. "Neither are they," she replied. And she sang a single note, a forgotten anthem of unity. And the room fell still, because you're always moving either toward the self you dream of, or away from it. Chapter 2. She embedded herself among rival factions, each convinced the other was beyond redemption. To one, she taught a melody of grief. To another, a harmony of hope. The echo adjusted the city's listening posts, not to spy, to reflect. At midnight, they transmitted a chorus. Different voices, same longing. The city stirred, enemies hesitated, and for a brief moment they wept, not for defeat, for recognition. "I thought we were alone," said one soldier. "No," she answered, "just unheard." And walls once built to silence others began to echo with common breath. Chapter 3. The night of detonation came, not with an explosion, but a song. The device armed to divide was reprogrammed to amplify connection. Voices across Kedres sang the same refrain. "We were never just one thing." The war dissolved, not in surrender, in harmony. The song woven from wounds vanished. Only her voice remained carried in lullabies and warnings. The echo of creation built no statue, only a station, where all voices are welcomed, even discord, because peace is not perfect melody, but shared rhythm. And when the city finally slept, it dreamed, in chorus. Title: The Gamble of Ash and Light. Year: 93,365,384.62. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The archivist of Ash recorded only losses. Cities vanished, lives unlived, promises broken and never rewritten. She sat them in towers of charred vellum. Her ink mixed with soot from the ruins she wandered. Then came the healer who wounds bandaged head to foot, not to hide, but to remind. Each bandage held a name, each name the lesson in pain and potential. "Why do you carry suffering?" the archivist asked. "To teach healing," he said, "through healing wounds before it closes." She almost laughed. Almost. He offered her a gamble. Leave her next page blank. Choose not to record an ending. And during one more day, he said, may be the most sacred battle you fight. So she agreed, and the ink dried in silence. Chapter 2. They journeyed into the valley of echoed attempts, where every footstep recalled a failure. There they found a village built on risk. One child leapt from roof to roof missing, then trying again. An elder brewed wild roots, uncertain of poison or potion. No one shamed them, no one stopped them. The archivist, unused to anything without a guarantee, faltered. "I don't belong here," she whispered. "That's why you must stay," said the healer. He unwrapped one bandage, showed her a name, her own, a risk he had once recorded in faith. And suddenly the silence around her was a threat. It was possibility. Chapter 3. The archivist lit a fire, not to burn pages, to warm hands. She taught villagers how to record their accounts, not just their triumphs. The healer opened the sanctuary where wounds were retold, not hidden. Years later, travelers came to the valley for courage, for the gamble, not to win, but to try. And when asked what changed the archivist, she would smile and point to a blank page, framed, untouched, because sometimes, she'd say, Not finishing is the bravest act. The healer nodded, because the wounds they carry had become seeds and risk. I'd rewritten everything. Title: The Listening Ground. Year: 93,269,230.77. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The river that forgets did not erase memory, it held it just out of reach, humming it softly through its bends. Travelers who drank from it remembered things they hadn't lived, and forgot what they once feared. At the delta, beneath a sky that never stopped turning, lived the light-bearer. They held a lantern of no flame, only reflection. When the Council of Five refused to hear the cries of the low quarter, the river rose, not an anchor, an invitation. The light-bearer called for gathering, not protest, presence. And people came, from towers, from alleys, to listen, because freedom begins the moment you stop explaining and start becoming. Chapter 2. They built no stage, only a circle, and in the center silence. One by one, voices entered. A weaver, a thief, a midway. Each was heard, none were interrupted. The council watched from their balcony, waiting for rebellion. What they saw was something worse. Unity. The river whispered stories through the fog. The light-bearer pointed to no side, only to the middle, and the space there grew wide enough for disagreement, soft enough for change. They renamed it the Listening Ground, where no title granted louder speech, and no truth stood alone. Chapter 3. The council descended, not with guards, with questions, and were answered not by experts, by neighbors. The light-bearer stepped back. The river ebbed. No decrees were issued, but a garden was planted. In it, seeds of language, gesture, and pause. Years later, a child asked, "Who ruled before this?" An elder smiled. No one who still needed to. The listening ground remained, not as monument, as method, because adventure does not always look like battle. Sometimes it's a conversation that stays, long after the voices rest. Title: The Center That Burns True. Year: 93,173,076.92. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The flame between worlds flickered inside the minds of visionaries and men alike. She was said to be a muse to the bold and a curse to the selfish. Where she passed, revolutions stirred, and so did regrets. In the neon alleys of Veridor City, she met the Time Bender, a recluse who had once predicted futures, then locked them away to preserve the present. "I've seen what ambition does," he said. "Even mine. And I've seen what suppression births," she answered. They debated under synthetic starlight, watched by statues of forgotten ideals. "What you fear," she finally said, "guards what you're meant to find." He looked away, toward a sealed vault labeled, "My True Purpose." Chapter 2. The vault opened not with codes, with confession. The Time Bender admitted he feared irrelevance, that he once tried to freeze time so his impact wouldn't fade. The flame said nothing, only burned brighter. They walked the city together, confronting echoes of the Bender's past. A child inspired, now disillusioned. A tower built, now leaning. He tried to explain. The flame placed a finger to his lips. "You're not here to be worshipped. You're here to serve." Together, they lit lanterns. Each one floated with a name forgotten by history. And the people watched, in silence, in awe, not of him, of hope. Chapter 3. The Time Bender released his final chronospell, not to preserve, to share. Everyone in the city saw a moment from their future, if they dared act for the common good. Many wept, some laughed, all moved. The flame between worlds vanished into the wind, but her warmth remained. The Bender rebuilt his tower not to touch the sky, the anchor a public square, a place for ideas, debate, unity. And when asked what finally balanced his ambition, he pointed to a small plaque. "What burns for all never burns out, because personal greatness fades, but shared light endures. Always." Tale: The Road of Sacred Wounds. Year: 93,076,923.08. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The flame-bearer did not carry fire in a torch or lamp, but in her chest. Her breath sparked in cold air. Her footsteps lit moss paths through forests forgotten by ton. She had failed many times, missions abandoned, allies lost, choices made in haste. But each time she returned, each time stronger. The wildness found her tangled in the roots of a fallen tree, muttering apologies to ghosts. "You bled again," he said. "I always do." "Then perhaps it's time to listen to the wound." She looked down at her scarred hand. It pulsed. "Wounds are sacred glyphs," he said, "that tell you where your soul once bled to learn." And the path before her flickered with light. Chapter 2. They ventured toward the shattered steps, cliffs, etched with the names of those who never returned. The flame-bearer had etched hers there once, Now she came to revise it. Along the way, storms tested their pace. Memories tested her faith. At one precipice she paused. What if I fail again? And you'll know how to rise. The wild myth answered. They reached the steps. Her name glowed faintly. She touched it, and beneath it carved a second line. Still learning. The cliffs groaned and shifted. A new path opened. Not down, not up, forward. Chapter 3. The new path led to a valley veiled in mist. Inside, those who had failed and never moved again. She entered with her chest aglow. They stirred. The wild mutt sang off key, but with soul, and the valley answered. The flame-bearer knelt before a broken hero. I know your wound, she said. I know your fear. She touched his shoulder. He cried, then stood. The valley breathed, because to fear failure is to freeze, but to learn from it, that is to burn, with purpose, and leave behind light for those still crawling. Poured courage. Title, The Fire That Rewrites. Year, 92,980,769.23. Era, Age of Tempests. Author, Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The last guardian of the first flame could no longer fly, not because his power faded, because he had grounded himself. Choosing to walk along the ashes of the city he once failed to save. He lit no beacon. He answered no distress calls. He simply listened. Then came the once god, clad in humility and scars. Once worshipped for his might, now feared for his silence. Why do you linger in ruins? The guardian asked. Honor what I burn to rise, said the god. They sat and watched a girl dig through rubble for ceilings. Defeat does not end you, said the god. It inks new scripture beneath your skin. And the guardian looked at his hands scarred, glowing faintly, still holy. After 2, they began to rebuild, not temples, gardens. The guardian taught children to shade flame without destruction. The once god offered his strength. Only one asked. Their enemies returned not to conquer. Asked, how did you change? We stopped needing to win, the guardian said. We started needing to serve, the god added. An old villain planted trees. A former hero wept at sunrise. The people began to forget titles and remembered names. What they had lost was mourned, but not chained, because something new was growing, and it asked for hands, not thrones. Chapter 3. On the day the first flame was finally extinguished, no one panicked. They gathered, not to reignite it, but honor it. The guardian passed his mantle to no one. The once god knelt, and became simply a man. A song was sung off, he offbeat. Perfect, because it was real. And the city did not rise in grandeur. It pulsed in truth, and the scripture beneath their skin no longer burned. It bloomed, because to create new light, you must sometimes lose what once made you shine, and still you remain. Title, The Quiet Between Flames. Year, 92,184,615.38. Era, Age of Tempests. Author, Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The flame that listens burned without crackle, without heat, only presence. She did not speak often, but when she did, her words felt like rain on ash. She wandered the hollow peaks with a lantern that held no fire, just light pulled from memories. In the small valley town of Veldra, she met the veiled remedy, a healer who used silence as medicine. His patients did not cry out when he worked. They listened to their own breath instead. Their first meeting happened beside a sick child. She's afraid of pain, the healer said. The flame knelt. She's afraid of not being seen. And she touched the child's chest. As silence you avoid, she whispered. Is your soul speaking without breath? And the child smiled. Chapter 2. They began tending the town together. The flame visited homes, not with advice, but with presence. The remedy sat beside graves and made no effort to fix grief. At night, they shared tea and no words. One evening, the town mayor asked, Are you two in love? They looked at each other, and the flame said, We're now trying to be heard. The remedy added, We're learning how to hear. They walked to the edge of the village and sat by a crumbling wall. She leaned into him. He didn't move, and the wall didn't fall. It listened, and began to bloom with moss. Chapter 3. When the storms came, the villagers panicked. They begged the flame for light. She gave them lanterns. Empty. They don't work, someone cried. Neither does shouting into wind, she said. The remedy offered silence, and the villagers sat together, one by one, lanterns lit not from fire, but from stillness. The storm passed, and the town exhaled. The mayor carved a plaque. Here, we were finally quiet enough to become whole. The flame and the remedy left soon after, not because they weren't loved, but because love had learned to listen. And that was enough for a story. When, gently, title, The Shelter Within Shadows. Year, 92,788,461.54. Era, Age of Tempests. Author, Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. A bone scribe etched memories into mirror his own. Every story, failure, and secret bled into bone, scarring him with tales the world refused to remember. He walked the outskirts of cities, speaking only when silence grew too heavy. In the underground sector of Greymorn, where walls heard more than people and laughter was met with suspicion, he found the outcast flame, a fugitive who lit hearts in abandoned buildings, drawing the wounded like moths. "You'll be caught," the scribe warned. "I'd rather be caught offering warmth than survive by withholding it," she said. He stared. She didn't flinch, and in that pause, trust cracked open, because the boldest act is to face the unknown with open hands. Chapter 2. Together they transformed ruins into sanctuary. No permits, no banners, just shared meals and space for trembling troops. The bone scribe etched each story in the floorboards. The outcast flame taught fugitives to light fire without fear. A woman admitted her betrayal. A soldier confessed he no longer knew why he fought. And no one was exiled, because the room itself had no corners, only curves. The authorities came, not to destroy. "They'll understand. You're harboring criminals," they said. "We're harboring humanity," she replied. They left, uncertain. But they didn't return, because safe space breeds not rebellion, but reckoning. Chapter 3. On the wall they carved a vow. "We hold space so no one has to hold it alone." The bone scribe placed his final etching into the hearth. A single word. "Welcome." The outcast flame burned, no longer in hiding. She stood by the threshold, lantern in hand, and when someone asked if she feared being extinguished, she smiled. "I've spread too far for that." The room filled, not with people, with presence. As growth is not loud, it is honest, and vulnerability is not weakness. It is invitation to gather, to rest, and to rise together. Title: The Thread Between Us. Year: 92,692,307.69. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The silent witness stood at the border of every village but belonged to none. He carried no flag, no past, only a quiet that listened better than any chorus. In the village of Surloon, where sorrow was sung as lullabies, he met the grief singer. Her voice wove lost into lullabies, each note cradling wounds she could not heal, but would never abandon. "You do not sing to forget," the witness said. "I sing to remind," she answered. They watched a child light a lantern for her father's memory. No tears, only a smile. "Life," the singer whispered, "is a balance between holding on and letting go." And the lantern lifted, tethered to a thread that glowed only when touched by grief and love. Chapter 2. Together they visited each home, not to speak, to listen. In one, an elder wept for a friend long buried, that grieved. Singer hummed. In another, a young couple argued over whose pain mattered more. The silent witness placed a stone between them. "Not to divide," he said, "to rest upon." They sat, hands touched. Later the singer asked, "Why do you walk alone?" "I don't," he replied, looking at the threads he now carried from every soul he heard. Each thread shimmered, not with light, with connection. Because individuals were never meant to be towers. They were tapestry, frayed and sacred. Chapter 3. When it came time to leave, the villagers protested. "You've helped us," they said. "We've remembered," the singer replied, "and we were reminded," the witness added, "that we never walked alone." They left behind no monument, only a spool of thread, and winding slowly across thresholds, doorways, arms. The villagers added their own, braiding stories into bridges, hisses into anchors. The grief singer sang one last time, not of sorrow, but of shared breath. The silent witness wept, openly, because love had shown its face woven into every voice that dared to be heard, and life, at last, no longer stood apart. It danced. Title: The Trail of Unyielding Light. Year: 92,596,153.85. Era: Age of Tempests. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Shire Walker moved across vast deserts and ice-bound bridges, never altering her stride. Her path didn't avoid danger, it challenged it. She carried no weapon, only a truth so sharp it fractured illusions on contact. In the ruins of the Etherian archives, she encountered the keeper of cosmic law, part scribe, part sentinel, bound to enforce equilibrium even when it cost him comfort. "You walk where no one dares," he said. "I walk where I must," she replied. He watched her leave footprints across a field of unspoken rules, and realized none of them cracked beneath her. "When you walk your truth," she called over her shoulder, "the world follows your footprints." Chapter 2. They journeyed together toward the celestial rift, where stars fell to test mortals' resolve. The keeper brought ancient edicts, The Shadow Walker brought stories. At the rift, a tribunal of cosmic entities demanded compromise. "Relent," they said, "and we will bless your journey." "No," she answered. "Then you will walk alone." "I already do." The keeper trembled, caught between duty and belief. "Laws of all," she whispered. "Will they break those they were meant to serve?" He dropped his scroll, took her hand, and together they stepped into the rift, not to bend the stars, to remind them who lit them. Chapter 3. Beyond the rift, they found not punishment, but potential, a realm where reality reflected the soul. Her footprints ignited paths for others, flickering trails of conviction. The keeper inscribed new laws written in sand, not stone, so they could adapt, so they could listen. When they returned, the world had shifted, not by decree, by example. The Shadow Walker vanished again, but her prints remained, burning gently, guiding softly. And when asked how to lead a meaningful life, the keeper pointed to them. "Begin there," he said. "Begin where you refuse to betray who you are."